Welcome back to the O Show, everything crypto and Bitcoin every day. I have my good friend Corey from Swan on. How are you doing today, Corey?
Hi, Wendy. I am good. It's good to be back.
I'm excited to chat with you. So, because you're a cool maxi. You're a cool maxi.
Listen, whatever you want to call me is fine.
All right. So, you guys, we're going to talk about, I guess, the S word. And we're also going to talk about Biden's executive order and how it is going to kind of impact the entire space. Because we talk about this a lot on my show, but I really wanted to get Corey's take on it because he's been appearing on a lot of mainstream media outlets, Bloomberg, Yahoo, kind of talking about this. So I wanted to take some time and steal a little bit of clout from Corey. I'm just kidding. I wanted to get you to come on because I enjoy talking to you. So let's first talk about that nasty S word, sanctions. And really kind of how that is being talked about in the crypto space and Bitcoin space. Because realistically, if you read Satoshi's white paper, he talks about a true decentralized economy. And we talk about a true decentralized economy on the show a lot. Basically, a true decentralized economy is I get to have my beliefs, you get to have your beliefs. If I don't like it, I can tell you. And if you don't like mine, you can tell me. But at the same time, I can't infringe on your beliefs or force you to do anything or tell you, you can't send money here or you can't do this and vice versa. So talk to me a little bit about how sanctions are going to work with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is truly decentralized.
It is. And yeah, basically where we are is the market cap and the liquidity of Bitcoin are large enough for individuals to move and store and hide relatively small amounts of money, but nowhere close to big enough for super wealthy oligarchs or state actors to do anything in size that matters for the relative size of their economies or their whole net worth, basically, because it's easy enough to police the off ramps and the on ramps. And so like, it's just really hard to hide multiple billions of dollars on a blockchain.
That's what I was thinking too. Cause and I don't think that people like Elizabeth Warren, when they come out and they're like, Bitcoin is bad, blah, blah. Yeah, of course, Bitcoin can be used in some illicit activities, but how much cash is being used for illicit activities? They can't even track that. They can't even come up with a clear idea or a clear number. They can use statistics. They can use statistical data to say, hey, well, this much of crime happens in this sector. And we're going to go ahead and just assume with this data that we have that it's X amount of dollars. But in reality, they can't really track it. It's very hard to track. But with Bitcoin, you can track everything, because even though Bitcoin supports anonymity and it supports privacy, it's really not all that private. And there's some very small people out there. And we've seen with the Bitfinex hack, for example, they were able to track those funds down fairly easy. So if somebody's doing illicit activities with Bitcoin, you're going to be able to track it down. And to me, it's just kind of mind boggling that they're using this narrative that Bitcoin is bad, when in all actuality, it's kind of a good thing because of settlements. And because if you want to find a bad guy, you can.
Yeah. I mean, technology and leveraging sort of spying techniques, sort of through regulatory and applying that to technology is the lazy way of policing. We used to just go after the bad guys, and that's basically what you'll have to do again. And then just broadly thinking about technology, like it's neutral and broadly positive for humans as technology advances. So, I mean, as we've said many times before, there's plenty of good and bad uses for the internet. And Bitcoin, the internet of money, is going to be no different. It's money. People can use money for good things or for bad things. They might fund your allies. They might fund your opponents. They might send some money to somebody that you like. They might send money to somebody you don't like. And it might allow somebody you like to save their money or spend their money. It also might allow somebody you don't like to save their money or spend their money. Bitcoin is for enemies.
So how do you think that, because obviously we're in this big conflict, everybody's involved, but how is this going to impact future regulations, do you think, with all the sanctioning coming out? Because where I stand, I want to really try to do my best to operate in a full decentralized economy. And I don't want to tell people what they can and can't do with their money. Obviously, there's good and bad people, but we're seeing the United States government take some pretty aggressive, make some pretty aggressive statements towards that. And it has me worried a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just the U.S. government, right? There's New York State has something going through right now trying to ban proof of work mining. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had some EU discussions that thankfully got killed in committee, whatever the European version of getting killed in committee is. But there was language in there to ban proof of work mining throughout the EU. And, this doesn't matter for Bitcoin because Bitcoin will roll on. It does matter for individual Bitcoiners, right? And so within each jurisdiction, New Yorkers are rallying and writing their legislators and trying to kill this. Obviously, people from around the world lobbied and called legislators in the EU and got that killed. But, back to the beginning point you were making, it's always part of the conversation now. There's really no one at any national level that's saying like, this doesn't matter, this won't matter in the future. Anyone who has any bit of knowledge about what's going on with Bitcoin is aware that it does matter and will matter more in the future. So it's always on the table for discussion.
And so kind of segueing into legislation, when we talk about Biden's executive order, because it felt like the United States was kind of threatening so long to do something like to regulate crypto. And I know for a fact they've been studying Bitcoin because there's a NIST program on it. And I covered it on my show. I want to say right before the panorama. So they've been studying Bitcoin to actually use it as legal tender. But of course, I feel like the United States government wants something that's going to truly be transparent where they can track everybody. But at the same time, they need to have protections in place so you can't track what they're doing. Because if people saw that they were charging, let's say, $1 million to fix a road, when in all actuality, it would cost maybe $200,000, and they're pocketing that extra money, it'll cause a little bit of problem. So that's my personal thoughts. But when you see this executive order that Biden dropped, like a lot of people don't understand that they're really going to be pushing the CBDC. And how do you think that will impact Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think so basically it amounted to do some research, guys. That was basically, it was like, hey,
was
all
it for
agencies
180
everywhere,
days?
let's go do a bunch of research on this stuff. I think that was when the report is due,
Okay.
whatever this thing is. So all the agencies go out and do their research and then pull it all back together and have some kind of unified viewpoint in the future. They're certainly laying the groundwork for a potential move to CBDCs. I think there are a lot of legal and sort of just like political and historical reasons why we won't actually see a CBDC in the United States.
Really?
I think it's just, I think it's something that will just end up getting killed because of politics, and it just won't get through. I think it's just too far afield. It's too privacy invading. And I think there are still enough people on both sides of the aisle in the United States and people that are party unaffiliated that will come and sort of raise enough of a stink to kill a CBDC. I do think they will support the continued digitization of the dollar and basically allow private banks to do that. I just think the banking lobby, leave crypto out of it. Like the banking lobby is too strong, and CBDCs are a direct attack on JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, all those guys. Because they lose their Cantillon effect, sort of, essentially they're the closest to the money spigot, and most of their profit comes from being able to get the dollars cheap and then lend them out more expensively. And if the government has a direct relationship with citizens and can give us our dollars directly without, essentially creating money through issuance of credit, which is the function of our private banks in the US, that industry would just wither and die. And I don't think they're going to go without a fight. So.
But my question on that is, if they move all of the tangible dollars to digital dollars, wouldn't that essentially be the same thing as what the banks are doing, is able to borrow for cheap and then, whatever it is they're doing? Because realistically, if we look at the economy, if we look at the United States of America, mostly everything is done from our phones, from a card. It's done. It's not tangible what we're doing, how we're spending our money for the most part. So really, and I'm trying to rationalize it in my mind so I understand, because
yeah, it's just the difference of having some intermediation in between the Fed and the citizens.
Okay.
So FedCoin is basically what you would call a United States CBDC, because it would be the Federal Reserve actually issuing the currency and, keeping track of everybody all the time. And you wouldn't have the banks intermediating that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that will get through in the United States.
It's a very interesting take. Like, I think it's going to come through. And the reason why I think it's going to come through is because we're seeing China, that they have their digital yuan and they're really pushing that out. And there's other countries that are doing similar. I want to say it was Dubai that was doing a test pilot as well for like a CBDC. And I just kind of feel like that's the route that they want to take. I understand the point about the Federal Reserve, but Federal Reserve is kind of like a third party to the United States government, even though it is I view it as a government body because it's legalized cartel. Like anything that's a legalized cartel, government to me. Like, that's the way that I classify and rationalize in my mind. I just don't see how the United States is not going to be able to do it, because they want to track the people. They want to be able to say, hey, we'll do this, this, and this, and this. And I feel like it would be easier to track money going across borders with a CBDC. So I'm just trying to rationalize like what are we going to do with
So I'll put it this way. Think about the incentives. I don't think there are more people willing to stake more of their political and social and actual capital on an anti-privacy bent going after a full-on CBDC China style versus the people who will stake massive amounts of real capital, massive amounts of social and political capital to fight against that, to maintain the privilege of the major investment banks, because that is who really owns the legislature in DC, is the banks basically, and they will fight against the CBDC, and they have way more money and way more power than anyone that's trying to, basically push like an MMT CBDC angle. And it's just not, politically and culturally and historically, that's way more in line with the way that China has run versus how it is here. We have much more of sort of an independent bent and separation of powers and things like that.
Not trying to be combative, but are we really, really free in the United States?
It's all on a spectrum, isn't it? we're not that free. We have the illusion of freedom in many cases, and it's basically it's the filter bubble that we live in, and what's allowed in front of our eyes. And you have to really seek out truth. It's very hard to find because it gets blocked at almost every turn, and something that's not quite true or feels kind of truthy is what's put in front of your eyes. Got
it. So in closing here, what do you think the outcome? Well, I'm going to have two closing questions. The outcome of sanctions regarding cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, what do you think that outcome is going to be once things are kind of, or not necessarily an outcome, but like a domino effect? Because it's going to, what's happening with Russia, Ukraine, it is going to cause essentially a trickle down effect for future instances that happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it builds the case more and more often as people watch this. More and more people prepare for a potential crisis in their jurisdiction, or get their friends and family around the world to prepare for potential crisis where they live, which means putting some of your net worth in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Right.
That's fair.
Because it's really difficult to do it once the crisis is already underway. Although we have seen a lot of Russians and Ukrainians be able to, thankfully, acquire Bitcoin in the middle of the crisis. You can't always guarantee that window will be open. Like, it was very difficult to acquire substantial amounts of Bitcoin in Lebanon as their currency crisis was occurring, especially if you were holding Lebanese pounds. Right. And so, you need your savings in something that people will actually exchange for Bitcoin if you have to do it concurrent with a new crisis. But ideally, you're prepared well beforehand and have a good chunk, or at least have the have some currency that is going to be exchangeable for Bitcoin in case your own local currency comes under attack.
Okay. And then what about the outcome for Biden's executive order, this whole research group that they're launching? And how do you think that this is really going to impact Bitcoin?
Again, I don't think it'll impact Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin rolls on. I think, if anything, if you have a bunch of people researching Bitcoin, like we've seen time and time again, whenever a regulator or a federal agent or whatever is tasked with figuring out Bitcoin, they usually end up being GP of a crypto fund within a few years.
Yeah.
They learn about it and they understand what it actually is. So, as I often say, it's not just a meme to say that this is good for Bitcoin. This is contingent on, this being good for Bitcoin is contingent upon there being there has to be something happening. Right. So if there's something good happening, it's good for Bitcoin. If there's something bad happening, it's good for Bitcoin, as long as it's in the conversation. So I'm broadly bullish for Bitcoin I'm not broadly, I'm completely, totally super bullish on any number of people looking into Bitcoin. That's good for Bitcoin. It may not be good for lots of less decentralized crypto projects, obviously.
Right. No, and one of the things I want to close this out is and say that one of the things that's hard for me right now, because I'm a woman, we're a little bit emotional, and I have a family, and I know you can relate to this because you have kids, don't you? So
I got kids. Yep.
So I think just as humans in general, the fact that we say this is good for Bitcoin and this is bad, or this is good for Bitcoin, the good and the bad, it's the truth. But at the same time, it's kind of hard because you look at your kids and you don't want your kids to suffer. But at the same time, it's like, we're going to, like with the panorama and all these things, we're going to have some suffering in order for Bitcoin's true intended purpose to really be showcased. And I do believe we are going to have some sort of recession that's coming, because it is just, things are out of control with money printer go burr. And I feel that almost that it's going to impact our children in a negative aspect. And I don't want anybody to be hurt or to feel sad or to feel any kind of pain, but at the same time, it's like, it's a necessary evil, and it's just not a good feeling sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've taken up the charge at Swan of trying to do as many things for Bitcoiners as we can. And I think that definition, continues to expand over time, and eventually we'll be all 8 billion people on Earth will be a Bitcoiner at some point. So, just trying to do these things that make the landing softer, that make, the off-ramp from fiat and the on-ramp into Bitcoin easier to understand, to execute, to feel safe, to feel secure. I think that's really what it comes down to. And that's the fight that we can all fight locally, wherever we are, whether you're in Germany or Singapore or Thailand or the United States, New York State, Hawaii, wherever you are. Like locally, you can make it better for Bitcoiners, and we can fight these fights, because these rules and these regulations that come down aren't going to do anything to the Bitcoin network. And they're not going to do anything to the long-term success of Bitcoin as an asset, which I think is inevitably will be global money and will have most of the world's store of value stored in the Bitcoin protocol over the long run. It's just a matter of like how soon that happens, and whether you and the people you care about are going to get to enjoy that without boots on your necks, right? That's what I'm fighting for.
I agree. Well, Corey, thank you so much for coming on. And if you guys are not familiar with Swan, I highly recommend you check it out. I will have the links down below. They offer Corey and Swan. He does a good thing over there. So make sure you guys check it out. At the end of the day, I think that Bitcoin is a great hedge against the US dollar and against uncertainty. I am a Bitcoin holder, but majority of my holdings is Bitcoin. And yeah, check out Swan. Thank you so much for coming on, Corey.
Can I plug a book? Because I don't know if people know that my co-founder, Jan Pritzker, is actually a Ukrainian immigrant.
Okay.
And the opening chapter of his book, Inventing Bitcoin, actually talks about his family leaving the Ukraine in 1989 and how they were blocked from taking their wealth with them. So it's a very Bitcoin story, and I highly recommend reading it. And we give that book away for free. So you can just go to swan.com/free book and grab that ebook or audiobook and see what it's like from a perspective of somebody that actually had to do that, and how much better it could have been with Bitcoin.
Agreed. Thank you again, Corey.
My pleasure. Thanks, Wendy.